The night was colorless except for the faint red glow of the clock above the counter, its blinking digits reflected on glass jars and candy wrappers. Outside, rain slithered down the window like oil. The gas pumps stood motionless except one, Pump 7, where a sedan idled without headlights. No sound came from the engine, but white vapor curled from its tailpipe. I waited for someone to step out. No one did. Yet the register beeped and printed a receipt. Approved. I hadn't moved. I glanced back toward the lot. The shape inside the car sat perfectly still. My breath fogged the glass as I whispered, "Hello?" The fluorescent canopy flickered once. In that flash, the car door was open, and something pale leaned halfway out, unmoving, like a photograph burned into the night. The refrigerators hummed louder, drowning out the storm. I grabbed the store radio, calling for anyone awake, a driver, a cop. Someone, but only static, hissed back. The security monitor flickered. 4 pumps stood empty. One glowed too bright. Pump 7. The image stuttered like a heartbeat. The figure inside the car was facing the store now. I leaned closer, the radio pressed to my ear. "Do you see that?" I whispered to no one. The camera glitched again, showing the driver's hand raised against the window, palm open, still as stone. When the screen cut to black, a receipt printed by itself. Pump 7. 30M. Approved. My hands shook. The parking lot lights outside began to hum, and for a moment, the reflection in the glass showed 2 silhouettes. But I was alone. I stepped into the storm. The rain struck like needles, each drop colder than the last. Pump 7 stood under buzzing light, the car door open. No driver. No footprints leading away. The keys dangled from the ignition, spinning slightly though there was no wind. I touched the hood. Warm. The odometer blinked zeros. I exhaled, and the vapor from my breath didn't drift away. It curled downward, sucked into the crack beneath the pump. A faint dripping sound echoed, steady and rhythmic. My eyes followed it to a dark streak stretching across the pavement. It pulsed faintly, like blood through a vein. The lights flickered once. I turned toward the door, and for a split second, a figure stood reflected behind me. Too tall, face blurred, head tilted at the wrong angle. Back inside, the store was colder. The receipt printer was still running, paper curling on the counter like a pale tongue. Each line said the same thing. Pump 7. 30 a.m. The timestamp never changed. I dropped the slips, and they scattered like snow. The lights flickered. A shadow crossed the window. I looked up. A figure stood in the rain, soaked, head slightly bowed. Its face was wrong, blurred like a photo mid-shake. The automatic door slid open though no one stepped in. The air that came through was colder than ice. My reflection rippled in the glass. Then the overhead speaker crackled. A voice, distant and slow, whispered, "Pump 7. Approved." Ah! The voice repeated until it bled into static. The lights dimmed to red, and the hum of the refrigerator ceased. The silence was suffocating. I turned toward the back door, locked tight. When I looked back, the store layout had changed. The aisles shorter, the counter closer. The red register glow pulsed like a heartbeat. The monitor showed only Pump 7, the camera shaking slightly. The receipt printer coughed one final line. "Transaction complete." The door chime rang. No one entered. Wet footprints shimmered on the tile, beginning at the door and ending behind the counter. I turned slowly. The sound of the gas pump resetting echoed outside, a hollow click that seemed to answer my breath. The storm broke an hour later, but the air didn't feel clean. The lot outside shimmered beneath the canopy lights like oil on water. Inside, everything had shifted an inch. Shelves misaligned. Candy wrappers torn open. A smell of damp concrete rising from nowhere. The phone rang once. I picked it up and heard the faint hum of the pumps, followed by my own voice whispering, "Approved." My stomach clenched. I traced the line to the wall where the cord entered, and beneath the plastic, a slow pulse of light moved, traveling through the wire like a heartbeat. I unplugged it. The hum continued. The power wasn't feeding it. Something else was. I turned toward the window. The car at pump 7 was gone, but its headlights still glowed faintly on the wet pavement. I went outside. The headlights burned bright against nothing. No car, no shape, only the space it should have occupied. Beneath the light, the pavement rippled, as though something alive stirred beneath it. I stepped closer and heard the soft groan of shifting concrete. Then, a low tone from the speakers under the canopy made the world vibrate. It wasn't feedback. It was a word. Stay. My chest tightened. The rain had stopped, but droplets still fell from the air, suspended mid-descent before vanishing into steam. The gas pumps clicked once, in unison, and the digital displays glowed. 3:00 a.m. Every clock had reset. The sound came again through the lights through the air. Stay. My reflection trembled in the glass door, like it wanted to run without me. I turned back inside, drenched and shaking. The lights flickered once, and the radio behind the counter hissed to life. Static, then a man's voice. Flat. Calm. Pump 7 operational. I froze. The register drawer opened by itself with a metallic snap. The bills inside were soaked, dripping onto the tiles, though my hands were dry. The smell of gasoline grew thicker, coating my throat. I looked down. The wet footprints from before were gone. In their place, faint smudges, circular and mechanical, like imprints from boots too heavy for bone. The speaker above crackled again. Refueling complete. Then silence, except for a slow trickle somewhere below my feet. I knelt. The sound wasn't water. It was breathing, echoing through the floor. I followed the sound into the storage room. The air there was warmer, heavier, like the breath of a furnace. The concrete floor bore stains that hadn't been there before, spreading in branching patterns toward a small hatch behind the freezer. It pulsed faintly with light. I crouched and pressed my ear to it. A heartbeat thudded once, slow and deep, followed by a whisper. Open. I grabbed the handle. My fingers left sweat on the metal. The moment I lifted it, the hum stopped. Darkness swallowed everything. Then from inside the hatch, a beam of red light erupted upward, casting my shadow across the ceiling. The shape it made wasn't mine. Too long, with a head tilted the wrong way. I stumbled backward, the red light pulsing like a warning. The hum returned. Stronger this time, shaking the shelves. A rush of cold air blew through the store, knocking over displays. Every pump outside clicked in unison, resetting over and over. I ran for the door, but the handle wouldn't turn. Through the glass I saw the headlights again, now closer, inches from the door. Glaring like eyes. The reflection inside them wasn't me. It was the driver. Face dripping, expression blank, staring from within the light. I fell to the floor. The intercom crackled once more. Pump 7, refilled. Then the lights burst white. When my vision cleared, the store was quiet again. Only the sound of the rain returned, and the faint smell of gasoline coming from under the floor. The morning never came. The sky beyond the windows was a permanent gray, humming faintly, as if the air itself carried static. The hatch in the storage room still glowed through the cracks, thin red lines tracing along the floor tiles like veins beneath skin. I had pushed boxes over it, but they rattled now, shifting as though something below was breathing out. The intercom remained silent, yet the speakers popped occasionally, releasing short bursts of whispering static. Words, I couldn't quite form. Then the power flickered once, twice, and from the corner of my eye, a shape crawled across the reflection in the freezer door. I turned. Nothing, but the smell of gasoline was back, stronger, almost sweet. I realized it wasn't coming from the pumps anymore. It was seeping through the concrete. I crouched beside the hatch again, heart pounding in rhythm with the low rumble beneath it. The light had shifted from red to a dull orange, like molten metal cooling under glass. The sound of movement below had become deliberate, something dragging, something wet. I pressed my ear close and heard faint breathing, steady and human. "Help!" a voice whispered, weak and far away. It was enough to make me tear the boxes aside. The air that escaped burned my lungs. It smelled like gasoline mixed with rot. The whisper came again, louder this time, but layered. One voice stacked over another, hundreds tangled together, all saying the same word. Approved. The handle of the hatch trembled in my grip, as if something on the other side was holding it too. I ran for the breaker panel behind the counter. The switches had melted slightly, fused with the wall, dripping small black trails down the surface. I yanked the main power, but nothing changed. The lights still hummed. The glow beneath the floor still pulsed. On the monitor above the register, Pump 7's feed flickered back to life. The car was there again. Headlights off, door closed, driver's window rolled halfway down. I watched as the interior light flickered on. Someone was inside, but not moving, not breathing. Then the car door opened slowly, and a thick, black liquid poured out instead of a person. It crept across the pavement toward the door, spreading in patterns like veins. I backed away. The door chime jingled once. Even though it hadn't opened, the air conditioner roared suddenly, blasting hot air that carried the stench of burnt fuel. I stumbled toward the window and saw the canopy lights outside were bending, arching downward like plants reaching toward the ground. Their glow pulsed in time with the hatch below, brightening with every thud. My reflection in the glass rippled again, this time stepping forward while I stood still. It raised its hand and pressed it against the glass from the other side. The surface fogged around its touch, forming words written backward. "It wants out." Then, from outside, the fuel hoses at each pump lifted by themselves, twisting in the air like serpents. The ground vibrated, and I heard the unmistakable click of Pump 7 resetting again. Something beneath was hungry. The noise beneath the floor grew louder until the tiles began to crack. The hatch buckled once, twice, then burst open, releasing a column of black mist that smelled of oil and decay. I fell backward as the vapor formed shapes, outlines of faces screaming silently before melting into smoke. The store lights flared, white, then red, and the radios all switched on at once. Every speaker hissed, then spoke in perfect unison. Pump 7. Refilled, my hands trembled as I crawled toward the counter, slipping on the wet floor. The receipt printer came to life again, spitting endless paper across the tiles. I caught one sheet. The timestamp read 3:0 a.m. The customer name line was no longer blank. It read, "Employee on duty." By dawn. If it was really dawn, the light outside never changed. The world beyond the glass looked frozen, every color drained out until only gray remained. Inside, the hatch had sealed itself, leaving the floor cracked and uneven, warm beneath my feet as if something pulsed below. The hum of the refrigerators turned rhythmic, matching the faint thud I felt through the tiles. I unplugged one unit, and the sound didn't stop. It shifted pitch like breathing. The air vents exhaled a soft mist that coiled around my shoes. I whispered to the empty store, "What are you?" The overhead lights flickered in answer. 2 short flashes, one long. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, almost like Morse code, almost like thought. The mist thickened until the shelves vanished into a white blur. Somewhere inside it, glass bottles clinked, as if being tapped by invisible fingers. The sound echoed from aisle to aisle, drawing closer. I backed toward the counter and saw the security monitor flicker on by itself. Each camera feed showed the same image. The store from above, empty, except for a dark outline that moved where I stood, following every step half a second behind. I reached for the screen, and static bloomed across it. When it cleared, the view changed to the parking lot. The car was back again, door open, but this time it wasn't pump 7. Every pump was labeled 7. The numbering on the panels flickered endlessly, repeating like a curse. The mist coiled toward the ceiling and gathered near the fluorescent lights, dimming them until the store felt submerged underwater. Then the speakers crackled. Soft static, a low tone, then a voice barely audible through the hum. Shift change. The words rolled through the air vents like a sigh. My hands trembled as I moved toward the exit, but the automatic door didn't react. Its sensor light blinked once, red instead of green. I pressed my palm to the glass. It was cold as stone. Outside, the world looked flat, as though the air itself had solidified. Even the falling rain was frozen mid-drop. The whole night, or whatever time this was, had become a loop, and I was still inside it. I retreated behind the counter, gripping the receipt printer as if it could anchor me to something real. The machine clicked once, then began to print again. Slow, deliberate, mechanical. The paper slid out blank at first, then darkened line by line, forming words. Welcome back. My pulse jumped. The lights dimmed and brightened with each click of the printer. It wasn't electricity doing this. The store was awake, breathing, thinking, remembering. I looked up and saw the ceiling vents inhale slightly, pulling in the mist as if drawing breath. The doorbell chimed softly, though no one entered. The sound echoed backward, rewinding itself. Then came a whisper behind me, my own voice saying, "Approved." I walked slowly toward the center aisle, the mist thinning just enough for the shelves to reappear. The floor beneath me vibrated faintly, the rhythm of something vast and patient. The air smelled faintly of ozone, clean but heavy. Charged like the moment before lightning, I whispered again, half a plea, "Let me out." The fluorescent lights responded with a single sharp flicker, then everything went dark. In the silence, I heard the soft click of the pump handles outside, one after another, falling back into place. The hum faded, and the air stilled. I took one step forward and found myself facing the door again. The same position, the same reflection, the same time glowing on the clock. 3:00 a.m. The shift hadn't ended. It never had. The hum returned before sunrise. If sunrise even existed here. It came from the roof this time, a deep vibration that made the fluorescent bulbs tremble in their sockets. The phone on the counter lit up again, showing no number, just a pulsing gray square. I answered it without thinking. At first, I heard only wind, then a faint chorus of overlapping voices whispering the same sentence. "Can you hear us now?" I backed away, still holding the receiver. The static shifted into a tone that matched the rhythm beneath the floor. The entire building resonated with it. Every shelf, every can. The hatch in the storage room began to glow again, but this time it flickered white. Not heat, not light, something else entirely. The sound became a heartbeat. The heartbeat sound grew louder, syncing perfectly with my own pulse until I couldn't tell which belonged to me. I dropped the phone. The windows fogged from inside, every pane clouding with condensation that moved against gravity, drifting upward instead of down. The fog thickened into letters that formed on the glass. "Stay open." The register beeped once, then displayed a sale total of $7.77. Outside, The lot lights flickered on even though the world beyond was black, as if night had expanded to fill every direction. I realized then that the store didn't want me to leave because it couldn't survive empty. It needed someone to keep it alive, to keep it running, to keep it breathing. The doorbell rang again. I froze. The automatic doors slid apart, and a rush of cold air swept in, carrying the scent of pine and rust. A man stepped through. Or what looked like one. His shape was wrong around the edges, like static fuzzing a broadcast. He wore a soaked jacket and mud-caked boots, and when he spoke, the words came slightly delayed, as if replayed from a recording. "I'm here for the night shift," he said. My chest tightened. His eyes didn't move right. They lagged behind his voice, catching up half a second later. I managed to whisper, "It's still my shift." He smiled, or tried to, and replied, "It's always 3:00 a.m. somewhere." He walked past me like I wasn't there, boots leaving no footprints on the wet floor. The air behind him shimmered faintly, warping the reflection in every surface he passed. The intercom clicked alive again. Not static this time, but soft music, a lullaby that didn't belong anywhere near this place. The melody made the lights sway slightly, bending toward him as he moved. He placed both hands on the counter, and for the first time I saw the veins under his skin pulse with white light, the same color that leaked from the hatch. "Shifts over," he murmured. The music stopped mid-note. Outside, every pump nozzle lifted, pointing toward the sky like antennae, listening for something new. The newcomer turned toward the door, but the world beyond had vanished. There was no road, no forest, only the canopy light floating in darkness. The store groaned, its walls expanding with a deep metallic sigh. He looked back at me, expression unreadable. "They're calling for another station," he said, voice dissolving into static halfway through. The hatch began to glow again, brighter than ever. My reflection in the glass door started to move on its own, walking away from me into the black outside. I tried to follow, but the door didn't open. The clock above the counter blinked once, twice, and froze on the same number it always had. 3:00 a.m. The hum returned, softer now, almost content. The silence after he appeared was heavier than noise. It filled the aisles until every product label looked like it was waiting for me to speak first. The newcomer stood motionless at the counter, eyes fixed on the security screen as though watching something I couldn't see. The monitors cycled through empty feeds, then froze again on pump 7. Only one difference. This time, 2 figures stood beneath the canopy instead of 1. I blinked, and they were gone. He turned toward me then, voice low, steady. "You should clock out." I looked at the register. Its display glowed white instead of red, numbers slowly dissolving into static. "I can't," I said. He nodded once, as if that had been the answer he expected. He walked along the aisles, fingertips brushing each shelf. Wherever he touched, the products realigned themselves, labels turning outward with quiet precision. The hum of electricity softened until it sounded like breathing again. I followed him, unwilling but unable not to. When he reached the back of the store, he stopped beside the humming freezer door and listened. "They'll call again," he said almost kindly. Then he looked at the floor. The cracks from the hatch pulsed faintly under the tiles. But there was no light now, only warmth. I asked what the store wanted. He smiled without looking up. "Continuity," he answered. The word echoed against glass, repeating until it no longer sounded human. Outside, a fog had gathered so dense that even the canopy lights disappeared inside it. The only visible thing beyond the glass was a faint shimmer, like headlights submerged underwater. The man stood beside the door, hand hovering near the sensor, but it didn't open. He didn't seem surprised. "It'll loop soon," he murmured. I asked him what that meant, but he didn't answer. Instead, he looked at his reflection, which stared back half a second late. "When it loops, don't speak," he said quietly. "It hears tone better than words." The hum outside deepened. The fog pressed closer to the door, rippling as if breathing in time with the lights above. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied in a dull amber glow. Every object in the store seemed slightly displaced, the aisles a few inches closer, the counter at a different angle. My watch ticked backward for 3 beats before freezing. The man placed both hands on the counter and looked toward the ceiling as if listening to something above us. A low mechanical tone answered, stretching through the vents like a single note held too long. Then, one by one, each pump handle outside lifted again and hung suspended in the air. He whispered, "That's the signal." I asked him what would happen now. "Nothing new," he said. "Just again." The hum slowed until it became silence. The newcomer turned off the radio, shut the register drawer, and began to wipe the counter clean. Precise, calm, routine. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Shift change," he said. I waited for the lights to flicker, for time to reset, but nothing happened. Instead, a faint warmth rose from beneath the floor, and the clock above the counter ticked forward. 1 second. Just one. Then it stopped. The sound of a distant car engine rolled through the fog outside, steady and real. I moved toward the window, but the man stopped me with a quiet shake of his head. "Let them think it's open," he said. The bell above the door chimed. The bell above the door kept chiming, even though the door didn't move. The sound looped, uneven, like a recording playing through a broken speaker. The man behind the counter didn't react. He just kept wiping, circular motions over the same clean spot. The fog outside thinned for a moment, revealing faint outlines of trees, a stretch of highway, and then nothing. I stared until my eyes burned. The road looked wrong, a perfect loop, leading back to the station from both directions. I said nothing. The man glanced up briefly and smiled, as though proud of the silence. The hum beneath the floor began again, steady and low. A heartbeat returning to something that refused to die. The lights flickered overhead, but this time they didn't pulse in warning. They blinked in rhythm, deliberate, controlled. The man looked toward them, nodded, and whispered, "Inventory check." One by one, the refrigerators clicked open on their own, the cold light inside them spilling across the floor in perfect synchronization. The air smelled like rain that would never fall. I looked at the rows of identical products and realized none of them had labels anymore. Just blank white wrappers, untouched, unreadable. The store had cleaned itself. The sound of faint typing came from the register even though no one was near it. When I looked, the display read, "Shift confirmed." The hum beneath my feet softened, content. Outside, the fog had turned silver. Shapes moved within it. Outlines of cars pulling in, drivers stepping out, none of them fully there. Their headlights cut through the mist but cast no beams. The man opened the cash drawer, placed nothing inside, and closed it softly. He nodded toward the window. "Customers," he said. The automatic doors slid open a few inches, then stopped. The silhouettes beyond didn't enter. They stood still, waiting. The man turned toward me. "You should rest," he said gently. "It takes more than one to keep the lights on." I wanted to ask what he meant, but words caught in my throat. The air hummed with quiet approval. I sat behind the counter. The stool creaked beneath me. Familiar, grounding. The clock above the register blinked faintly, frozen on the same number it always had. The man stood by the window, watching the motionless fog. Then he turned to me, voice barely audible. "When it asks, just say yes." I nodded without understanding. He smiled once more, almost kindly, and stepped into the mist. The doors closed behind him, sealing with a quiet hiss. I waited for the sound of his footsteps, but none came. Only the hum remained, softer now, rhythmic, steady. I looked at the clock again. The seconds hand twitched forward once, then stopped. The quiet felt almost gentle. The hum beneath the floor blended with the soft whir of the lights, forming something like a lullaby. I found the receipt printer still on, a single slip waiting in its tray. It read, Pump 7, ready. I didn't touch it. The air tasted of dust and ozone. I rose slowly, looked toward the window, and saw movement, a car easing into the lot, headlights flickering once before stopping under the canopy. The pump clicked into place. The lights steadied. I felt my pulse slow to match the rhythm of the store. The bell above the door chimed again. My mouth formed the words before my mind caught up. "Welcome," I said.